Welcome to Rules Explained, where we break down the mechanics of tabletop role-playing games. In today's episode, we'll be diving into the topic of alignment. For decades, alignment has been a cornerstone of character creation in role-playing games, but is it still relevant in modern gaming? And what do different game systems do with alignment? Join us as we explore the history, mechanics, and controversy surrounding alignment in role-playing games. Whether you're a veteran player or a newcomer to the hobby, this episode is sure to provide insight and food for thought. So grab your dice, join us as we unravel the mysteries of alignment in role-playing games. I'm John Merritt.
I'm Rob Nothing.
And in this episode, we've got a special guest star, Sean. He's going to be joining us. We're going to be talking about alignment. First, let's define what alignment is. Rob, why don't you define alignment for us real quick?
Oh, okay. You gave me the simple question. In the short form, alignment is a way that role-playing games will go ahead and try to, for lack of a better term, codify or create some sort of structure around the story, so that way there is a clear distinction between the good guys, if you wish, and the bad guys. It is also a way to assist the earliest form of role-playing rules to go ahead and assist the players in how to go ahead and play their characters. Today we of course have really many role-playing systems have basically created checklists or personality quirks and so on and so forth that you go ahead and apply. But back in the day, alignment was the way you defined how your character would interact with the world around him and how he would respond to people who were of other alignments.
Yeah, I always thought that was cool how it had, at least back when we started, alignment was very, very rigid. Your character was, chaotic neutral. He was lawful good. He was lawful evil. He was chaotic neutral. He was chaotic evil. He was, pure neutral. Now that was an interesting alignment to try and play. And I think the alignment is still very, very important today as it pertains to the character. It gives him spirit. It gives him purpose and direction. He's not just, a empty vessel that says, I'm here.
Well, one of the things, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, a long time ago, where we're at today, because there's, a lot of debate is, let's call it out, is Dungeons & Dragons, Wizards of the Coast going to be removing alignment for some stuff? There's been a lot of rumors about this lately. And some people are in uproar, some people think it's great. I've always been a fan of, the game master tells a story. And it's, an adventure for me is kind of akin to the holodeck. It's a interactive story in which, multiple people take part of. And when you create a character within the story, that character needs purpose and direction. And that's really what alignment does. Helps guide his code of ethics as,
Correct.
he sees the world. And, I don't see it going away. And I've always thought that the story should trump mechanics.
Well,
I know
funny
we're...
that you should say that you don't see it going away, because that right now is the current rumor surrounding D&D and its new incarnation, as far
It is a
as
rumor,
whether or
though.
whether or not they want to get rid of alignments, because one of the great things that alignment did and still does, as you alluded to, is it gave you a sense as a referee and as a player, a sense of order, for lack of a better term. It helped you go ahead and wrap your mind around this very alien and unknown world, so you knew where you stood in it, and your alignment would go ahead and help dictate your reactions to other alignments, as I said earlier. Without it tends to go ahead and create a little bit of chaos in the game world, as far as I'm concerned, and I could be completely wrong, but we're going to explore this topic today in great detail.
It was real interesting. I was listening to, I think it was, and please, if someone knows about this, put it in the comments below or email us at rulesexplained@gmail.com. I believe it was the Dungeons & Dragons official podcast by Wizards of the Coast. And they had a clinical psychologist on there, and he was talking about, well, I think she was talking about alignments and trying to get role-playing games in the schools. They're like, we're finding this to be fantastic therapy for some kids because what happens is these kids are brought up in such a structure. You have home structure, you have school structure, structure for this, structure for that, and they're just surrounded by rules. And then all of a sudden you put them in this game where it's really open ended. And yeah, they go nuts. What do? I burn down the tavern. It gives them permission to go and have experiences or doing stuff, actions without real tangible consequences to it. And it gives them a chance to just let go.
Yes, there was a discussion of that very catharsis of alignment and how many players would first get themselves involved in the game and play those very chaotic alignments. Sometimes chaotic good, sometimes chaotic neutral, but very often the chaotic evil would be a choice for many of these beginning players because, as you just said, it allowed you to go ahead and free yourself from what you saw as the rules and the imposed order that you had no control over, and this was a way for you to kind of, without the real life consequences, just let yourself go.
Yeah, which I thought was hilarious because when role playing games first kind of were mainstream ish, back in the 80s, it was you're going to go to hell, and it was works of the devil, and you're casting real spells, and we all wear black hoods, and could kill small animals.
I remember that game of Mage.
And now 30, 40 years later, they're now saying we need to get these in the schools and get kids playing this, and it's turned into such a mainstream form of entertainment. But to get back to alignment.
Well, if I can build on that comment you just said, as a high school games club sponsor where I had these games being played and I was either in charge as the game master or watching them construct their own games, I did recognize just how many students who were not very willing to interact with others or to become social were able to find their voice through these role-playing games. So I'm going to go ahead and say I have evidence, all sorts of evidence, and I will back you up 1,000% on what you just said.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing. Sean, when you went to high school, you joined a games club, didn't you?
Very, very shortly in my last year, but yes, I did.
Middle school, I know you were in a strategy and tactics club, weren't you?
Yes, but that was more of a board game.
Still, it got you out, it got you talking to other people, that they got to talk to you.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We went every day after school, before school, sorry. And we played for like 1 or 2 hours. We played a board game. We played Axis and Allies.
And let's think about that for a second. Axis and allies, and the whole concept of and how that relates to the whole concept of alignment. There you go. Axis, evil. Allies, good. I know it's a simplification, but that is something as a history teacher, I would make sure the students understood as far as why World War II is such a popular war for many reasons. People love studying World War II, and one of the reasons is because it's a very simple story about basically good versus evil. You can't get much more evil than the Axis powers and what they were committing and what acts they were committing during the Second World War. And the other powers fighting against them were nominally good. I'm not going to talk about Stalin or the Soviet Union at this particular point, but there you go again. This idea of helping the human mind structure its world and make sense of its world is just, it's inherent. It's a need we all have.
Yeah, after reading about, and watching a few other podcasts or YouTube videos about the rumors of, I almost said Games Workshop, Wizards of the Coast removing alignment, I was like, oh my gosh, I just recently bought a 5th edition player's handbook. I think the last Dungeons and Dragons purchase, player's guide I purchased was 2nd edition, which I still have. And I went, it didn't dawn on me that, they have, yes, this is 5th edition, but which version of it? They have many different, versions of 5th edition. And I went back and I looked through it. I started paging through it, and I went, oh, okay, there it is. I found alignment. It's still in there. It's got the 9 quadrant, good, neutral, evil.
Lawful good, neutral good.
That's it. Thank you. Yeah. So I was like, okay, good. That's still there. But I think what Wizards of the Coast is trying to do is, take some sentient fantasy creatures like kobolds. Yes, not all of them are probably chaotic evil. You know, to get back to opening up the imagination for the players and the dungeon masters. If they remove just that little aspect of it and then opens them up to saying, oh, well, what could these kobolds do?
Well, therein,
Yeah, maybe. Probably chaotic evil, but I
well,
could see them
therein
taking
lies.
some of them, like orcs.
Well, we okay. Let's talk about two different things that you mentioned right there, and I'll try to
All
address
right.
it in the way I see it very
Yeah.
fast. The first way is, the alignment system as it existed was simply, like you had said numerous times, and I agree, was a tool for the dungeon master and the players. And if you ran across, and I did this repeatedly, I always talked about the concept of redemption because I'm a big fan of not just of Tolkien, but my faith proves that as well. I mean, redemption is a real thing, and I would always have the possibility of an evil character going ahead and discovering, hey, this is not the way that I want to live my life, and so on and so forth. Of course, the opposite, the temptation of the good
Oh, yeah.
character falling into evil was a very big story trope. But you got to start with a baseline, otherwise you don't really have a story that makes sense. There's no structure, there's no construct, there's no paradigm for you to go ahead and base this off of. And then the other side of the issue that was brought up is the racist tropes that were sometimes portrayed through the alignment system. But I'm going to leave that discussion either for half an hour from now, or maybe we don't want to talk about it at all. But I do want to make sure we talk about those two issues to build off of what you just said a few seconds ago, John.
Well, it's interesting. I was, in your game's Spelljammer, and I'm playing something that I'm not comfortable. I shouldn't say not comfortable with, but something out of my norm. I'm playing a paladin. In the Dungeons and Dragons Spelljammer system, but I made him lawful evil. It's not that he's a good guy. He's just, if he's ordered to go out and destroy a village because it's in the way of the kingdom, he will do so, and he will kill every man, woman, and child in that village. But I left a lot of, I don't know, defects of character, maybe, or room for growth. Because, a level 3 or 4, he's going to go, wait a minute. Maybe I'm not doing the right thing here.
And what's
It's like
fascinating,
I watched, I watched the guy who created the Ahsoka character for Star Wars, and she is one of the most popular characters in Star Wars ever. And they asked him, why was she so annoying in the beginning? He says because he wanted to put things in there that showed growth in the character.
Yes.
And I went, wow, what a beautiful way of portraying it. It's not like, here's my character, he's done. Here's my character, yeah, he's got some issues. But he's going to get better.
Well, it's funny that you should say that because this might be a nice segue into talking about some of the actual alignment systems that are out there. But if you were playing, say, like you mentioned earlier, your second edition AD&D or your first edition AD&D or any of the very early games of AD&D, say pre-90, pre-1990, you would be penalized severely for
Yes.
changing alignments. It was
Yes, you
an
would.
anathema. You could not do that in Dungeons and Dragons.
So I wonder if we're just kind of seeing an evolution of alignment. Yes, alignment when it first came out was new because it was first came out. It was this rigid idea, and then as the decades came on, the gameplay came in. We said, okay, we'll make it a little bit looser. Then you can change your alignments. In fact, the campaign we're playing now, Age of Ashes and Pathfinder 2, the main villain, or one of the main antagonists, Menkar, he's an ancient gold dragon who started off lawful good. But as he got tortured by the Orb of Golden Kind, he was taken over and told to do some bad stuff. He shifted alignments to lawful neutral, for the greater good type thing.
And
So,
that's what makes great storytelling. And you
doesn't
can't
it?
have that, in my opinion, you can't have that unless you start with some sort of base. You know,
Yes.
I have a bad guy. Okay, well, what makes him bad? So the alignment
Yes.
system, as it was originally designed, provided that frame of reference for players and gave them that sense of baseline moral and ethical decision making and personality for their characters. So, do we want to jump right now and talk about the initial alignment systems that existed, or do we want to
Well,
continue to muse philosophically here?
oh, hey, you know what? I'll go whichever way. But I do know that the nine quadrant alignment system that we're accustomed to isn't the only one. Like for example, in the fate system, the characters have aspects,
Mm-hmm.
and you create essentially a phrase like "always protect the innocent" or "the justify the
Yes.
means," and you go by that, almost like words in House of Dragons. Are the family words.
That is correct.
And then we've got the apocalypse system, which has playbooks. Pre-designated character templates that come up with their own unique set moves and principles. So, Sean, when you play traditionally, which alignment do you normally go with?
Now, that's a good question because typically what I would do is I don't even pick an alignment for a character. Typically, when I go for a character, I think, how can he either fit in with the party or why is he adventuring in the first place? Because typically when you make a character, um in my mind, I always, like I said before, I always start with why is he adventuring? Why is he going out? What caused this? Because, typically you don't wake up one day and think, oh, I'm gonna go slay a dragon. Or, I don't know, I'm gonna go rob a bank or whatever. People have reasons.
Yes. Motivation.
Thank you.
It's a very big thing within the role playing world right now. Is what is your motivation for what you
Yeah.
are doing? And of course, when you first start role playing, your motivation is I want treasure, I want power, and so on and so forth. But obviously, as you progress, you want to go and create more complex stories. And I'll throw it back at alignment again. I think early on in the role playing history in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, alignments provided that, gave you that sense of, what are you doing? If you're lawful good, you're out there trying to go ahead and bring an end to the evil in the world. If you're evil, you're trying to spread the evil, and so on and so forth. So it did provide that motivation that you had just mentioned.
So for example, in another D&D game I'm playing a Dragonborn Bard. His whole motivation initially was just he wanted to see the world before, he got caught up in the story.
Oops. I see that as a motivation, not really an alignment. You know, yes, he wanted to go out and see the world, but how does he see the world? And what does he do when he runs into ethical quandaries? If he walks by and sees a highwayman robbing a coach, does he help? Does he help the thief? Or does he
Or does
just
he just
continue
pass by
walking?
and say, it's none of my business?
Right.
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
Oh, trademark.
Trademark. Marvel's knocking down my door.
Yeah. So, but I think it's funny because when Rob and I were playing, we did alignments, and Sean's, well, compared to us, still new at this, where he says, "I don't even pick an alignment yet," which I think is interesting. Is this the more is this the new norm now that we aren't seeing because we've been doing this for 40 years, 30 years?
Well, here, I have a question. What about games that don't have an alignment system? Like I brought it up before, but I looked through the Mage Second Edition book just for character creation. You don't pick an alignment there. What about a game I'm way more familiar with, Fantasy Flight Games Dark Heresy, where you're plopped into the Warhammer 40,000 universe as inquisitorial acolytes. You have one, well, I guess you could say you have one alignment there, and that is towards the Imperium.
That's a good
And I
point. I mean,
think,
even as I was looking at the Wrath and Glory book, come to think of it, I don't think I saw an alignment in there either.
well, I think in those types of games, just like in Axis and Allies, the alignment is subsumed into the the campaign environment, the milieu, if you will, the story.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a member and working for the Imperium of Man, you are of a lawful alignment, and that's about all we can say about that because
Yeah, no
there's
kidding.
yeah,
Lawful dictatorship,
yes,
yes.
you are following the laws and trying to spread the laws, and of course, if you're a follower of Horus, you are of the chaotic alignment. So that that is subsumed within the story itself, within the ideas themselves.
So if it's not listed, because yeah, come to think of it, when I ran that old vampire campaign many moons ago, there was no alignment system in that either.
Okay, but there were I don't want to call them houses. What the heck were there? Oh, bloodlines.
Oh, the clans, the
Clans. Yeah,
houses,
thank
the
you. But that also kind of dictated because I remember that campaign with great fondness, and depending on the clan that you were in, and that would be true for a lot of the World of Darkness products. Depending on the clan that you were in, that kind of dictated your world view and how you would interact with others.
That's true, it
So
did.
that's a good question. So actually, that got me thinking. Now, are we talking about alignments or ethics,
Well,
or are they the same thing?
they are related. They're not the same. Ethics, morality, patterns of behavior, your outlook at as what the world is, your views on what other human beings are or other living beings are, and how you should treat them, are all rolled up into the concept of alignment. And I think, for example, let me just, if you are a lawful evil alignment, your views on other living creatures are is that they should be preserved and life should be preserved, but only because that life is a means to an end, and that end is the maintenance of power or the maintenance of society or the construction of a grander worldview that includes your personal ideals about how that world should look, whether that be usually it's a dictatorship or some sort of autocracy. So yes, that's how the various other ideas get kind of rolled into what alignment is. These questions of how you view yourself and others and how you view ethics and morality is rolled into alignment. To answer your question, Sean.
Okay. Um,
Yeah, I think that's really cool.
it is cool,
Yeah, I mean, I don't see alignment going away anytime soon.
especially for like
No.
D&D or Pathfinder. I think those are pretty like integral parts of the game. How, but if they did get rid of it, and I remember you saying, um, the alignment could be baked into the system itself. For example, I don't know what's to stop them from just adding them in like specific modules.
Yes.
Yes? Yes.
In
We
essence,
like yes.
in essence, when you have something that is subsumed into the game environment, you've now opened yourself up to all sorts of different alignments, if you wish. So, for example, let's go ahead and look at Star Wars role playing games and so on and so forth. You've got basically again a lawful empire, but it's really a lawful evil empire, and then you have the alliance, which is
Lawful
nominally
misunderstood empire.
lawful misunderstood. The alliance, which is nominally lawful good, unless you want to just look into the deeper, seedier side, like say in Andor and so on and so forth. Um, Lawful neutral at best, I guess.
Try and give the universe a little bit of order. People freak
Yeah, how
out,
many
start
jobs did the
rebelling
Death
on
Star
you.
provide?
Yeah. What did the Romans ever do for us?
Yeah.
So, and if you can name that movie, you get yourself a cookie.
Ooh, I like cookies. So yeah, is there a lot of overreaction about? I mean, the Dungeons and Dragons is not going anywhere. I'm very scared of this new edition that's coming out. because from what I've seen and from what they're trying to do so far, I'm just not confident in them that they can produce a better game.
Well, I think what they're
And I
doing, and
really hope I'm wrong.
this is beyond the scope of this episode, and maybe we can bring this into focus on another episode. It appears what they're trying to do is what they've always wanted to do over the last decade, and I saw this in my games club, is make the game more inclusive for just about everybody. And Pathfinder, especially second edition, kind of started this idea with just eliminating some of the more restrictive language and opening it up to more of this is how I want to play my character. This is what
Mm-hmm.
kind of character I want. Do I want to go ahead and play a halfling, or do I want to play an elf with halfling characteristics and kind of mix it up? So it seems to me like it might be going in the direction that some of these more open-ended games like Big Eyes Small Mouth perhaps, but I might be just overreacting, or I might be just completely misinformed.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. When the books come out, I'm buying them because I got to check them out. And I always like new stuff. And I always like to see where things go and where we're at today. I mean, I looked at we play online. We use Fantasy Grounds for our virtual tabletop, and I looked at their statistics, and it was like 80 or 85% was the Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Pathfinder was like 5. It was really tiny. I think Pathfinder, especially over the past year or so, has really picked up in popularity.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, the Pathfinder game is a very very popular game system right now, and Starfinder, Pathfinder 2, yes.
And I'd be real interested to see if they eventually if which is the coast decides to come back to Gen Con. It's been what 10 years. I would love for everybody would love for them to come back.
Exactly. Sean, you're trying to chime in there.
Sorry about that.
Well, I was just gonna mention it, especially with like what some unfortunate Wizard of the Coast like decisions. I know a bunch of people have started looking at Pathfinder specifically.
Yeah, it's a
That's
great
all.
system. I'm really thrilled with it. In fact, I just picked up the Book of the Dead because Sean wants to play a lich in the next campaign, and I was like, yeah, cool, let's do it.
Oh, this book is great. You could, I mean, if you want, there's rules for playing a lich, a vampire. You could start off as a skeleton, a ghost, a ghoul, a mummy.
See, now that would be a very interesting character. What if you did a lich who was lawful good? He was like, oh my, he hates himself and he's trying to get out of, it's just, man.
Well, why would that? I think that it just introduces some more questions. Like, why would you hate yourself? You did this to yourself. This was a conscious choice.
Or maybe it wasn't.
Great question.
Maybe this
Or
was
maybe it
imposed
wasn't.
upon you, and you're trying to deal with it.
Even better. I love it. Yeah, I see. I think that's really cool. And the one thing Pathfinder did was they made all these not extra character classes, but they made them archetypes, which I think is great because, you still have your core, fighter, thief, wizard, you know, your base character classes, but you can customize them a little bit and not overpower other classes on it. They've done a really good job, I think, at balancing that out and giving players the options to play what they want and kind of make it like an open-ended game, like what you were talking about. Even your own character, a ranger, who has an archetype in cleric. Certainly nowhere near what a cleric can do, but you still have that tendencies of casting heal, curingness, performing your small miracles and such.
Yeah, and that's there is a tendency in the games, and I think we're drifting away from the alignment discussion, but there is a
Just a
tendency
little.
in games.
Just a little.
Yeah, there is a tendency in games recently in the Pathfinder D&D realm to allow for more flexible character creation, but I think what you end up doing is, and I think you hinted at this, are you then no longer D&D or Pathfinder? If you want a character system, if you want a role playing game which you can make a character who can pick pockets, cast magic spells, and wear plate armor, well, there's games like Fate, there's games like Big Eyes, Small Mouth, and so on and so forth, which are great games. But that's where you can design that type of a character. But if you're looking for a game in which the archetypes and the tropes are defined, not rigidly, but defined to assist you in the storytelling and to give you a sense of where you are in this fantasy world, I think D&D and Pathfinder and that such needs to stick to their guns and stick to their history.
Oh yeah, agreed. Yeah, agreed.
I
All
desperately want to
right.
talk about the alignments now.
Oh yeah, go.
Do it, do it, do it.
Oh,
Go.
okay. All right. Well, here is okay for those of you who are either not aware of the alignment systems or not aware of the history of the alignments.
He's
Here
going
we
into
go.
teacher mode.
Yep. Here we go with the ideas of what our alignments are. So, when the game first came out, and we're talking about chainmail. And for those of you who aren't aware, there is a chainmail rules explained video available on this channel. But chainmail, in its fantasy supplement, when they created rules so you could recreate your own famous fantasy battles, mostly Tolkien-esque, they created an alignment system which was based on three general alignments: law, neutrality, and chaos. Something that Michael Moorcock, Paul Anderson, and Tolkien himself, which Tolkien would not have called it law or chaos, he would just come around and said good or evil. But essentially, just the three basic alignments, and that's what defined your role was as far as how you perceived the world and how you perceived those who weren't your alignment. So if you're a chaos, you are automatically opposed to law. If you were a law, you automatically opposed to chaos and neutrality. Well, guess what? You're neutral. Duh. Okay. But then, as the game progressed, and to its advanced D&D mode, and then this method was carried over for D&D 3rd edition, carried over for Pathfinder, carried over for 5th edition. I'll discuss 4th edition in a second. They expanded it to 9 levels of alignments. So whereas before you had law, neutrality, and chaos, law essentially saying, we agree to cooperate as society, we agree to go ahead and do things for the common good, we agree to go ahead and cooperate. Again, we're not saying good or evil here, we're not getting Nietzsche here, but we're just saying this is what we do as lawful people. In chaos, only the strong shall survive. We're going to go ahead and bring about the dissolution of order. We want to go ahead and bring about a whole new world order in which there is total and ultimate freedom where no one is beholden to somebody else unless that
Yes,
person
New
can
World
beat you
Order.
up. Yes. So that's law, neutrality, and chaos. But now when you got AD&D first edition, D&D third edition, and actually AD&D second edition, and then you got D&D fifth edition in the Pathfinder. What's that?
No, sorry, I said I think I have that.
Yes. Now they decided, Gary Gygax, I should say, because this was kind of his little child, his little creation, to branch out into 9 specific alignment groups, to go ahead and reflect the diversity that he thought belonged within the concepts of law, neutrality, and chaos, because he wanted to introduce the concepts of good and evil now into the alignment spectrum. So now you have 9 alignments in a kind of a chart rather than a line. So we have lawful good, which is probably one of the most misunderstood alignments that are out there, but we can talk about that later. But lawful good is as it sounds like, you got a person who believes in the order as well as doing good. Now, what is good in the sense of this game? Good is the traditional Judeo-Christian Muslim view of what would be a good person. Okay, so it's a very restricted view, very Western oriented, with a slight Eastern bent if you include Islam, but it's very oriented towards that type of morality and ethical system. So you have lawful good, which presupposes again the whole idea of law and order, civilization, and hierarchies, and so on and so forth. And then chaotic good, which means I want to be free, but I still believe in the whole concept of good. On the other side, you have lawful evil, neutral evil, and chaotic evil. Again, evil being those things which are abhorrent to Western values. But again, still structured on this idea that there can be a lawful evil, there can be a neutral evil, there can be a chaotic evil, which is the complete disrespect and disregard for life of any sort. But then neutral is even broken up into lawful neutral, neutral neutral, just sometimes called neutral, and chaotic neutral, which is law above everything. Judge Dredd would be a good example of lawful neutral. And then neutral would be everything's in balance, we all kumbaya. And then chaotic neutral, the best way you can describe chaotic neutral, in my opinion, is borderline insanity. Not true insanity, but borderline insanity in the sense that you don't know yourself what you're going to do next. Because it's no longer a question of good or evil, it's no longer a question of what you're going to do, it's a question of what you feel like doing at that exact moment. So that was the alignment system that was created for D&D, starting with the basic system, law, neutrality, and chaos, and then branching out into the 9 levels that would be seen in 1st edition, 2nd edition, 3rd edition, 5th edition, and the Pathfinder, Starfinder systems. I will now pause to take a breath as well as a drink of water.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
That was quite a mouthful.
I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, I missed the third sentence.
Hopefully our viewers and listeners are paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, the point of view is interesting because, you say that it was done from, a Christian side. If a person is Japan playing it, they could have very well a different idea of what lawful good is. The code of ethics of what that subjectively means.
Yes.
From our perspective, that would probably hold true. Someone in a different country may have a different point of view. Axis and allies. The Axis didn't see themselves as evil. Are we the baddies? Did we have skulls on our helmet? Maybe we are the baddies.
Well, to be honest with you, many of the Nazis did have skulls on the helmet, but that's another issue altogether.
Scumbags with really cool looking uniforms. Yeah.
Right. They're evil, but they look good.
They looked really good.
Yeah. Again, email us at Rules Explained. We're bad people for saying that, probably.
Rulesexplained@gmail.com. I think that's all I really had for alignment today.
Oh, I got more.
Go. Let's hear it.
Okay, then 4th edition comes along. The wizard design team of Wyatt Merles and others decides they're going to go ahead and make a linear alignment system, which it was just kind of a hybrid between the original and the new, I should say, the original and the older. So now we only have lawful good, unaligned, evil, and chaotic evil, representing a very straightforward way of saying, okay, I'm either very, very good, or I just recognize good as an important thing, or I'm evil, or I'm just out, bat crap crazy, chaotic evil. So that's where 4th edition kind of changed things. Then you have the Palladium alignment system, which has
good one.
3 levels: good, selfish, and evil. And then they break these 3 general alignments into: good has principled and scrupulous, selfish has unprincipled and anarchist, evil has miscreant, aberrant, and diabolic. Again,
Yeah, see, I would argue that selfishness could actually be a virtue. I mean, I
Yes,
could
and
selfishly love somebody.
Well, it's also interesting with anarchism, because which school of anarchism are you talking about?
You're absolutely
So
correct.
it opens up debate, opens up talk. I mean, I love it. I think it's great. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Continue.
Well, no, I agree with you guys. This one was Kevin Symbiata's attempt, I believe, to go ahead and get rid of the sometimes vague and sometimes pigeonholed nature of the D&D alignment systems, and to try to create something that was more along the lines of a personality matrix combined with an alignment system. I'm
like it,
scrupulous, or I'm unprincipled, or I'm diabolic. I mean, it sounds almost like you're describing your personality rather than your code of ethics, as it were. But again, if you're a fan of the Palladium system, feel free to go ahead and dispute and or argue with me on that particular topic.
No, that's cool.
That's a good way of thinking about it. Like, what is your personality rather than alignment?
Yes. But it still did the function of trying to provide a framework for you to judge yourself, who you were in the world, how you view others in the world, and how to play your character. But Palladium was less rigid. We mentioned before that in the AD&D 1st and 2nd editions and in the OD&D system, you could not change alignment without serious consequences, like not being able to progress in experience levels and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
While Palladium kind of introduced the idea that, hey, these could be fluid. You might end up having, like you said, John, your character start out as, I'm a miscreant, but wait a minute, I've suddenly seen the light. Yay! Now I'm
Right. Redemption is there. Yeah.
right.
At the old parties that we used to have, there was always the paladin that's like, I think I'll go stand in the corner and play with this ball while you guys torture the guy.
Yes. I'm not violating my alignments if I don't see it.
That's right.
If I don't hear it. Da, 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 da.
I don't hear it. I don't hear it. I don't hear it.
If I don't see it, it's not real. Yeah. All right, guys. Anything else?
Well, I think I've said enough.
Thank you for turning into this episode of Rules Explained on alignment in role-playing games. We hope that this discussion has provided some valuable insight into the complex and often controversial topic. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or a new player, we encourage you to consider the role of alignment in your own games and explore the different ways that game systems handle this concept. Remember that alignment is just one tool among many for creating and portraying memorable characters in role-playing games. And that ultimately, the most important thing is to have fun and tell engaging stories with your fellow players. So go forth, roll those dice, and may the forces of good, or evil, or chaos, or law be ever in your favor.